just careers are not like a straight path. It's going to be lots of ups and downs. And I think people are recognizing that now with the layoffs. And like, I think just embrace it. I could take principles at Airbnb as their values. It's like embrace the adventure. And I think all of our careers are an adventure.
Hey everyone, welcome to our channel. My name is Dante and I'm a product manager. Today I'm super excited to welcome a very special guest and friend of mine, Sergio Patterson, who is currently a senior program manager at Airbnb. And we were both actually teammates at Facebook, now Meta, a few years back. Sergio has had an amazing journey working in the tech industry at some of the biggest and the fastest growing tech companies. Thanks for joining us today, Sergio. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm excited to catch up with you today. So for folks that are meeting you for the first time, Sergio, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah. Thank you, Dante, for the nice intro. Much appreciated. Yeah, so I'm based in the Bay Area. Father of two. I've got a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. They keep me pretty busy. And I think, when I think about my experience in tech, not in a million years would I've thought I would work at the companies I worked at. It just wasn't something I ever thought about growing up. And I think once I did break in, it wasn't like I jumped into a tech company right away. And I think having like humble beginnings early on in my career really helped me in terms of like work ethic and understanding customer success and customer service, and then kind of finding my way. But I think like overall, I'm a father. It takes a lot of time. Love sports. I love technology, and new technology specifically, and that's kind of what I'm passionate about. And I think that's where I've found my little niche in Silicon Valley.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing more. And our viewers are very interested in learning more about the role of a program manager, right? And so can you share us a little bit more about the core responsibilities of a program manager at a tech company?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. You get asked a lot, and some people confuse it with a product manager. You're a product manager, and there's lots of differences, right? There's key differences. As a program manager, I actually work really closely with product managers, but the way I define what a program manager is, it's somebody who can bring order to chaos, right? You've seen it at big tech companies, even companies like Facebook or Meta. It's not as buttoned up as one might believe or think, right? There needs to be a team of people who are good at execution, good at strategy, good at collaboration, relationship building, somebody who can bring people together to get something done, right? So as a program manager, you will kind of be the one that's overseeing a big initiative for the company, right? And there's going to be several work streams underneath that initiative that you're overseeing. You may not be in the weeds of all those, but you're the kind of glue that keeps the train, that keeps everything together. And you're the person that kind of makes sure the train stays on the track and stays on the right path. That's kind of how I define what a program manager is, and the difference between a product manager, who is somebody behind the strategy of a product.
You nailed it. I've had the pleasure of working with lots of great program managers. And as a product manager myself, it's really a pleasure because the main difference I see between a product manager and a program manager is around skill set. I would say program managers excel at execution. By working with a program manager, you ensure that things are going to get delivered on time and smoothly and of quality. And it's great also at ensuring that product managers or whoever you're working with are providing updates to make sure that everyone is aligned. Like you mentioned, moving a train very smoothly, right? And a product manager, I agree with you. It's more of a strategic role, thinking about the vision for a product area, thinking about trade-offs, prioritization. And when you combine strategy and execution, it's kind of the best of both worlds. So if you're interested in becoming a product manager one day or a program manager, both roles are similar. Key difference here, as Sergio put it, bringing order out of chaos that maybe the product manager is causing, a team
Product managers kind of bring some chaos, though, if I'm being honest. Not my product manager now, but no, it's interesting. That's like, you have to have that passion and skill set too. You have to be comfortable with change as a program manager, comfortable in being able to adapt in these chaotic situations, because if you're not, then like program management might not be for you. Because I think like one of the things that has allowed me to succeed in this role is I'm calm by nature, and I think I can bring that to these different organizations, and I think that's allowed me to succeed in that it is chaotic, but you need certain people and individuals to kind of bring everything together.
100%. And order out of chaos, that really stuck with me. So you've been at Airbnb for a few months now. Congrats on the new role.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to learn more about what does your typical day look like as a senior program manager at Airbnb.
Yeah, thank you. I started in November. Really, really excited about the opportunity. I think Airbnb is a special place. I've worked at a lot of big tech companies, like you said, and my role specifically, while I can't go into the details of what we're launching because it's confidential, I got brought in to help launch something new that
Mm,
Airbnb's coming out with, right? A program that Airbnb's starting and coming out with, and it's what's great about it is it's brand new. It's something that Airbnb has never done, and I have experience in launching new products. So like day to day for me right now is, like I said, there's a number of different functions and teams working on launching this new thing. It's my job. You know, I have different program managers within the program that I'm also trying to kind of keep on track, right? There's a TPM, that's another type of program manager, technical program manager. We have
mhm,
a design program manager part of this because there's a design component. We have marketing program managers, and we're all kind of working together. And I'm the one that kind of oversees it all.
mm,
So think of me as kind of the one that is like on a day-to-day basis, like, hey, we have these 10 different things we're working on, these 30 different open items or risks. Like I'm making sure all the things are happening right behind the scenes and working really closely with the product manager. So my day-to-day is like making sure everything's on track, working really closely with the product manager to ensure we're both aligned, because him and I are kind of we're kind of like together on the strategy of this program. We actually that's what's been really cool about this role is I've actually been a big part of building out the strategy
mm,
with hand in hand with the product manager, right? So we worked on that, and now it's like execution mode where we're getting ready to launch. So day to day is like a combination of a lot of meetings
mhm,
where we're like trying to get to decisions, right? Planning. We have planning's huge because at Airbnb, I think what's unique about Airbnb is leadership is very much involved in decision making.
mm,
And what I mean by that is like day to day decisions on projects. You have CEOs, you have VPs who want to know exactly what's going on from a design standpoint. So Airbnb is a design first company, which is awesome. That's kind of
mhm,
why when you open the Airbnb app, it's like, and you know this, Dante, you work there, right? So it's like
mhm.
it's very important the way things look. So I think
Yeah.
what's unique is a lot of the planning is like, okay, we need to get time with these leaders. We need to plan like a month, 2 months out just to get on their calendar so
Mm,
that we have our director reviews set up, VP reviews, then CEO reviews. So Airbnb is really unique in that I think the leaders are much more involved from a day-to-day standpoint in what's
mhm.
going on and how things look in the app, which is different. I don't know about your experience, but I felt Airbnb was different in that way.
Yeah, no, I remember I was shocked in a good way at how much designers had an input in decision making across the company. So I was part of the payments team a few years back when Airbnb was still a private company, and it was a short stint there. I was impacted by the layoffs, but I
Yeah.
really enjoyed my time there. I think I learned a lot about the importance of design and also UX research, user research, like conducting surveys, really trying to understand how guests and hosts are using the product. And it's the little things, right? It's like being pixel perfect
Yeah.
from the website to the app to your content help center, right? Airbnb did a really good job at keeping that design first principle across the company, from the product all the way to decision making. And I agree with you. It is a very special place and a very special type of culture. Their interviews are interesting too, right?
Yeah.
They do focus a lot on values, and we'll be touching upon that in the coming questions. But one
Cool.
thing that stood out from what you shared, Sergio, was you're working with many people. You mentioned product managers, you mentioned leaders,
And
right?
yeah, engineering.
Engineers,
Yeah.
right? TPMs, technical program managers. I'm curious, what has worked well for you when working with so many people and trying to bring order out of chaos? Any tips or advice there?
Yeah. I think the first thing that's helped me is I played sports growing up my whole life. So I've always team team environments have been important to me. My whole life. I think that's kind of like a core value of mine is like being a part of a team.
Mm,
So as anytime I jump into a program and I'm like the lead program manager, I see this as a team. And I think some companies and some organizations struggle and they work in silos,
mhm,
right? You have the product management team, you have marketing, you have design, you have sales. When I jump in and lead in a program, I try to come in with this team approach, right? Open and collaborative.
mm,
Everyone knows what's going on. Everybody's in the Slack channels. We have the right people in the right meetings. We're doing this for a common goal. So I think
mm,
the way I think about it, like the skills that you need and what's helped me in terms of working with all these different people, it's like, yeah, you said product managers, engineers, TPMs, marketing, and they all have different styles.
mhm,
So the first thing is to like create an environment where people feel like they're a part of a team,
mm,
specifically by like creating like a safe, trust, open, nobody feels judged. It's like we joke at the beginning of meetings, we laugh because it's crazy, right? So I think like that's one thing, and then the second thing is creating an operating system, is what I call it, where people know, okay, we need to do updates on this day, we have this leads meeting on this day, we use this tracker for this, and it's like a over time it becomes like a well-oiled machine
mm,
where like people just know, okay, Sergio's going to expect this thing from me, let's do it, and like this is why we're doing it. So it's like once they understand the why, then it works much better. I think if you're trying to be a program manager and you just ask somebody to do something without telling them why,
mm,
it typically doesn't work. But I think like one example is we have a weekly leadership update we have to send out, and I need updates from each function. What started as a 15-minute meeting where we'd get all these updates has now turned into just I put reminders on their calendars, hey, update this doc, and then I'm going to go update an Airtable.
mm.
And now people just go in, they give me their bullets, and I'm just sitting back like, oh, this is easy.
Piece of cake.
It's yeah. So it's like it doesn't happen right away, but you build this like operating system as a program manager that people can easily just understand and kind of execute within.
Yeah, and then look how much calmer now I guess the organization is operating, and they're operating calm, but moving. I'm assuming really fast, right? Thanks to
Yeah.
kind of the ways of working that you've established, or like the operating system, like you mentioned. Yeah, no, that's really insightful. And one of the great things of working with program managers is that order, that structure that they bring to the table. You mentioned why, right? Always understanding the why. That really resonated with me. As a product manager, I think that's the biggest question, and the most frequent question I get asked is, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this now?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that is one of the questions you'll get asked a lot when you're working at a tech company, or when you're just building something. Why are you doing this? And having a clear definition, a clear understanding, and putting that on paper is going to be very important, because then you can just reference it and share it with folks like, hey, we're going to be building out this new feature, or we're going after this new initiative. You can read more about the why behind it in this document. You can just share it across.
Yeah. One thing you're spot on. One thing I want to mention,
Mhm.
if we're talking about like quality program management, every meeting that you set up, make sure you have like a very tight and clear agenda. Send it out ahead of time, and everybody knows their part, what we're talking about, and try not to go into meetings without that, because then it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Who's taking notes? What's the purpose? And a part of my job is also like moving people through meetings.
Mm,
Like people can go into the weeds, and it's like on us to like, okay, like, okay, that's cool. We'll take that offline. Let's move on to the next topic. So
right.
that's just something that's a big part of my day to day. When I was thinking about your first question, is like the other part is like making sure we have the right priorities and agendas down for
Mm.
all the different meetings we have.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think something that I recommend folks to do is use the calendar invite. Let's say you're at a tech company and one of the tools you have is Google Calendar. When you schedule a meeting with someone, always, right? Even just writing out the word agenda in the description of the
Yeah,
invite is so important.
for sure.
So I always put agenda, this is what we're talking about, right? You can also add links and link out documents that are relevant to the conversation. Add them in there, right? You do use the calendar invite as a way to provide context to folks you're meeting with. It's going to save you lots of time. And if folks didn't read it, you can always point to the calendar invite. They can reference it, and you'll get the meeting moving a lot faster.
Yep.
Any other pro tips, I guess, around setting up meetings, running meetings, Sergio? I'm pretty sure you mentioned you do a lot of meetings and you
Yeah.
run a lot of meetings, so you have a lot of expertise in this area. Any do's and don'ts or pro tips around
I,
meetings?
yeah, I kind of touched on it, but preparation is huge. I really don't like when I don't feel prepared for a meeting when I'm just like going in blind,
Mhm.
because I think what I don't want to do is waste people's time, right? And we've gotten feedback. I've gotten feedback before. It was like, hey, like, like maybe that meeting could have just been an email, and I don't want that. I want to make sure meetings are like, if we're having a meeting, it's either going to be an inform where like people really need to know about this, or like there's a decision we need to make or a risk we need to talk about. But if it can be an email, I'd rather it just be an email. So I think like preparation and making sure you know the why behind the meeting is really important. And then in the meeting, I think you have to, I'm mostly like an introverted person, but I think what I've learned and what I like about program management is like if you're prepared, it's easier to like lead a meeting. You know the agenda. You've already connected with everybody who's gonna like lead a topic, right? And you can kind of like walk people through. It's like, okay, we're talking about this right now. Dante, take care of this topic, and then Dante does his spiel on his topic. We get through it, and I think one of the things is you have to be like actively listening,
Mm,
right? So that you kind of know when we're getting into the weeds, and we can probably move on to the next topic. It's
right.
like that's being able to like insert yourself without taking over the conversation is really important. And then I think as a program manager, you're kind of across it all. So you have the ability to kind of connect the dots or raise flags when others might not even know something's going on.
Mm,
So like a big part of my job is like product manager might think one thing, but they might not know what's going on in marketing. But
right.
I'm kind of across it. So I can be like, wait, or like or whatever it might be. So like that's the other thing is like being able to raise flags and connect the dots when you see the kind of the opportunity.
Yeah, and a lot of folks do refer to as dependencies.
Hmm.
And as you kind of join the industry or join a team, there's always going to be dependencies, and those can become blockers, which means like, hey, if I'm building a feature, and we might need the risk team or the legal team to chime in, right? We cannot launch this feature without their input. And
Yeah,
I think that's where you can pair with a program manager and they can help you push things forward. That may require a meeting, may require sending an email, some sort of sign off, and a program manager can help you execute and kind of bring order to that chaos and
yeah,
ensure that it's a smooth rollout.
yeah. I think the other part is kind of relationship building. As any strong program manager is going to be good at building relationships with people and
Mm,
networking and kind of knowing when to leverage those kind of relationships to
mhm,
move things forward. Again, like as a program manager, you're across a lot of different things. You have a lot of different relationships, and there are moments where you need to kind of leverage those to like get things done,
mhm,
right? And you want to be known as somebody who's easy to work with, right? You don't want to be somebody that's tough to work with. I think that's like another just piece of advice for anybody starting their career is like go in with a positive attitude, right? And don't make things harder on people. I think as program managers, you might be like, oh, we got to follow this thing. It's like, no, like let's operate, but like there's going to be things where we just have to get things done. So I think it's even this far in my career, I think it's still important that like you can't be a stickler on process. I've seen a
mm,
lot of PMs act that way, program
mhm.
managers, and it drives me nuts sometimes, to be honest.
Yeah. Process, it's an interesting topic. Many people, it's a love and hate type of
Yeah,
topic, right? I think overall having some sort of process is always needed, right?
it's important. Yeah.
It's important, exactly. One more, I guess, advice for folks too is taking notes during meetings. It's so important. Documenting decision making is very, very important. I've been at places where things are never documented, and it's such a pain because
uh,
if that person is no longer here, especially with everything that is going on in the industry right now,
yeah.
you're losing very important information that the next person that comes to your job or the next team that's working on that feature is not going to have access to that. So taking notes,
Yeah.
following up after a meeting with those notes with an email and action items, assigning owners and deadlines, putting a date to that, those are key pieces of information that are so simple yet so important to ensure that you keep moving forward and making progress in whatever project or initiative you're working on.
Yeah, that's a big part of what I do too. I think you're spot on. One tip for the audience: I've moved to so within Google Docs, I have like a running. This is for the program that I'm running. We have a running doc. It has every day of the week, every meeting we're in,
Mhm.
all the notes, all the action items. So it's one source of truth for the whole program. Anyone can go in at any given day and know, okay, there was like this meeting and it's visible. What are the actions? Who are the owners? XYZ, right?
Mhm.
So I think you're spot on. And then like sending the follow up email with the notes, with if you recorded the meeting, a link to the recording. There's just like all these little things people don't understand how valuable they are.
Mhm.
And I think that's where as program managers you can shine. Even product managers can do this too, but like those little things are what keep businesses running.
Right. Become a ninja note taker. It's
Yes.
a skill that will take you really far. At least that has been, I think, one of the things I try to be more consistent at and bring documentation to teams. That's very valuable. Sergio, I want to dive deeper into a topic that is very relevant today, which is layoffs.
Yeah.
You have a great podcast called The Free Retiree Show, where you share lots of advice around retirement, around business, around the tech industry and career. So folks, make sure you check out this resource and you can learn more about Sergio and all the great things that he's doing there. So we'll link that down in the video description. One of the things that you talked about in one of your episodes is, there's many people who have been impacted by layoffs over the past year.
Yeah.
And you have shared really great advice. And I really want to focus on two key things.
Okay.
Number one, how do you navigate a job loss or a layoff? And then number two, any tips on how to find job opportunities during an economic slowdown?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's tough. I appreciate you plugging the podcast also. Thank you.
Of course.
I think I'm glad we acknowledged the tough times we're in right now. I think a company you and I both just recently worked at, they laid off another 10,000 people
Right.
in mostly the recruiting space, I think. I don't know, did you hear about that?
Yeah, I saw that on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a super tough time, and I think your first question was around navigating job loss, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I was laid off from Google back in 2017-ish, 2016. I was part of Google Fiber. It was an internet TV service, and it was about 500 of us, right?
Mhm.
Came in one day. We had a random meeting on your calendar. It's never a good sign.
Right.
HR. And yeah, we got laid off, and it was shock at first. But I think what helped me during that process in terms of navigating job loss, like over time, it's going to hurt for a few days, right? And that's totally normal. But what I learned is you can't sit in that grief or that hurt or heartache for too long, right? It's not. I think some people take it to the heart, like it's attacking their character or their who they are as a person. But I think over time in my career, as I've learned, is like how good I'm doing at work, or if I get laid off tomorrow, it's not impacting me it's not I'm still like a dad, I'm still a husband, it's those things are way more important. So I think navigating job loss, first thing you have to do is find your silver lining. So for me,
Mm.
during my job when I got laid off a few years ago, I was able to spend a ton of time with my family. I was getting paid to like look for other opportunities, and that's not going to happen for everybody.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is that there's probably another door that's going to open for you, right? So for
Mhm.
anybody who's got laid off, like find your silver lining and have that positive mindset that like another opportunity is going to come your way, and there's a reason you're in this situation right now. So I think to answer your question, the first thing to navigate job loss is have the right mindset.
Mhm.
And once you get the right mindset, then it's about, okay, you got to treat this like a project. I always tell people you need to treat your job search like a project. So you talked about documentation. I have spreadsheets where I have like names of people I know at different companies. I think I had your name on a list once when you were at Airbnb,
Mm.
and like who I know, why I'm interested in the company, links to roles I'm interested in. Then you start building out your network, right? Get really active on LinkedIn. Make sure your profile is up to date. Make sure you're commenting and liking posts and engaging with communities, because what you don't want to do is just you get laid off tomorrow, but then like you have no social presence. And then I think the most important thing is like get your resume ready.
Mhm.
I've had some friends who've been laid off and then they're like, oh, I have to get my resume to ready. And that's, that could take some time, right?
Right.
It's not quick. So I'd say be proactive when we talk about navigating job loss. Get your resume ready, get your LinkedIn profile up to date, treat your job search like a project, document things, practice, role play. There's so many. I'm kind of rambling right now, but there's so many different things you can do that I talk about usually. But those are kind of like my 3 or 4 big buckets when I think about kind of navigating job loss.
Yeah.
But I think the first one I talked about, mindset, is the most important.
Yeah, keeping that positive mindset. Yeah, that's such a great checklist for anyone who has been impacted by layoffs. Hey, we both recognize that it's not easy being in that position. That happened to me at Airbnb, as I had mentioned. Sergio had it, back in 2017 at Google. It's something I think that we have to talk a bit more about. Something that's not easy to go through,
Yep.
and always try to keep that positive mindset and know that a great opportunity is definitely coming your way, especially being in the tech industry. There's always lots of opportunities, many roles, lots of innovation happening in that specific industry. So know that a great opportunity will be coming your way. Take your time to arrive at that positive mindset, right? It might be time that, hey, time for you to maybe take a small break if you can, right?
Yeah.
And spend time with your family, spend time with your loved ones. It might also be an opportunity for you to try out, if you always wanted to be a program manager, always wanted to be a product manager, hey, spend the next few weeks trying
Yeah.
to prep as much as possible, get your resume ready, and start applying, because this is an opportunity that you're getting, to kind of go after that next goal that you're thinking about. But yeah, no, thank you for kind of laying out that kind of checklist of things to
Yeah.
do when folks are.
There's so
Yeah.
many. Yeah, I think that's a good checklist. Did I answer the second part of your question?
Yeah, any tips on how to navigate, finding your next job opportunity during economic slowdown? I think you said get your resume ready, and essentially you're acting like a program manager, right? Making sure you're taking notes, setting up calendar invites for folks, right? Reaching out to your
Networking.
network,
Yep.
right? Posting on LinkedIn, social presence, like you said, is very important. A few things, I do want to mention. LinkedIn has actually become a great platform for finding your next opportunity. At least that has been my experience. And there's a few features that you can check out. One, they have an open to work filter
Yep.
that allows recruiters to easily know that you're looking for new opportunities. Number two, they have job alerts, right? So you can sign up for jobs that you're looking for, tailored to your location, to a specific role, and get those directly to your email. And also, you get notified in the app. So make sure to check out those features as well, if you've been recently impacted by layoffs or you're looking for a new job opportunity.
Yeah, my last 2 opportunities have been through LinkedIn.
There you go.
Yeah, when I worked at LinkedIn, a LinkedIn recruiter messaged me
Mm,
directly to my inbox, and then for Airbnb, I found the role just on LinkedIn.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think same for me. At WePay, a recruiter reached out on LinkedIn, and that
nice.
was after the Airbnb layoff. And then for Varo, I think they also reached out through LinkedIn. So yeah, the last two roles have also been the same
Yeah,
pattern for me.
it's such a good platform, like, especially for right now. It is tough, though. I wanna make sure I do acknowledge that it's not easy to get in the positive mindset, so that does take time. I remember being very, like, upset and down for a while.
Mhm,
But thinking back, it was like, okay, what was my silver lining?
mhm.
And then I realized, oh, I got all this time with my family, and like I think I learned how to cook better. Like there's so many different things like that
Nice.
you can think back when you have those moments in your life where you
Yeah.
can kind of have that perspective and reset.
Yeah, and one thing that helped me to get out of that like emotional roller coaster, I would say, is actually just talking to people. And I reached out to friends I hadn't talked in a while, teachers and past mentors, and that kind of helped me understand that layoffs are actually very common in one's career. When talking to those folks, I learned that people had been laid off 3, 4, 5 times in their
Wow.
careers, and so it is something that is maybe part of someone's career, right? It's not ideal and it's not fun. It's actually very hard to deal through those layoffs, but know that there's always great opportunity coming your way, and keep a positive mindset and make sure to reach out to your friends and your loved ones to find that silver lining, like Sergio put it.
Yeah. The other one other tip, practice makes perfect. I talk a lot about this on our podcast, the Free Retiree Show, but
Mhm.
job interviewing is a skill. I think that's something I didn't really touch on, but like
Mm,
you have to practice mock interviews, reach out to anybody that can give you feedback. You can talk to yourself. It might look crazy when you're in the mirror like practicing, but like going back to documentation, I have a list of like my go-to highlights of my career that I can speak to. When you think about trying to break into tech, most of the questions you're going to be asked in the interview are like behavioral type questions. So you should get really good at answering, tell me about a time when this happened or you dealt with this. And you should know your answers like the back of your hand. So I think like practice makes perfect. I know that is very cliche, but I would argue that the people that are putting that work in are going to be they're going to perform better and they're going to put their best foot forward every time.
Practice makes perfect. Sergio, you are arriving at the next topic that I wanted to chat with you about, which is, can you walk us through how you go about preparing for interviews at big tech companies? And there's many components, like from prepping your resume, maybe reaching out to folks, and then to actually starting rounds, the interview rounds. So can you walk us through how you approach preparing for interviews?
Yeah. I can. How about I just walk you through what I did for Airbnb?
Perfect. That works.
Yeah, I think since it's relatively fresh. So I think the process for Airbnb, right? So I believe I found the role on LinkedIn. And at the time when I was working at LinkedIn, I was actually doing really well. So I was a passive candidate, I would say. I was not really interested in leaving LinkedIn, but this role just really stood out. It was senior program manager for a beta program. And I loved working on new things. So the role stood out to me and I applied, and the recruiter reached out to me very quickly, right? Um, and I was like, you know what, I'll have a chat. I was open to the chat. And I think the first thing you should do, let's say you get an interview, right? Research is huge. So the first thing I do is when I know I'm going to get an interview is I'm researching the company, and it's not just the first Google result. It's a very deep like amount of time spending like understanding the company, the stock price, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what's going great, what is not going so great, and then like really defining what your questions might be. And I have that in a document. I've already been practicing my interview, so I kind of know I know a lot about the role. I read the job description. I have that all documented. I kind of know where I fit. And then the other part of the research is researching the person that's interviewing you. So I even spend time with whoever the recruiter is. I'll look them up on LinkedIn, and what I'll try to do is find one thing. I'm kind of giving away my secret sauce right now, but I'll find one thing on on their LinkedIn that I think is unique, and I will try to bring it up during our conversation. I'll typically say something like something I talk a lot about in our podcast is breaking the ice within and connecting with the person within the first 30 seconds. So anytime I hop on an interview, for this one specifically, I found something on her LinkedIn that I thought was interesting, and I somehow weaved it into the conversation. And in the first 30 seconds, I think like if someone asks you how you're doing, never just say, "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" That's your chance to be like, "You know what? I'm great. It's sunny outside. I just went for a walk. I'm feeling really excited. I'm happy to be here." That's your chance to connect with the person. Otherwise, you might just be interviewer number A or B or C. So that's one thing I do when I think about even the first impression for the recruiters, and it's really important. I know they're not the hiring team, but like you'd be surprised how much impact and say they have in the whole process. You want to get them on your side early and often. So that's like kind of step one for me, is that the relationship I'm building with the recruiter, and the research I did on the company. That's step one. Any questions on that?
One thing you nailed it. I was gonna say first impressions matter a lot. In anything you do in life, first impressions matter. But if you're going after that next opportunity that you're very interested in, like you said, build that relationship with the recruiter. And the first 30 seconds, I love that tip. Right, it's a great opportunity that the company's giving you to build that relationship with that recruiter and find common points of interest, like you mentioned, right? I remember I had very quickly one interview with someone who loves soccer.
Okay.
I went to their LinkedIn. I saw they would write articles about soccer. On Twitter, they were a Liverpool fan. So,
Oh wow.
that day during my interview,
I
Liverpool
can't
was
remember.
playing.
Are you Liverpool fan?
I'm a Manchester United fan,
United. Okay.
Chelsea as well. So a lot of teams, but
Yeah.
Liverpool is always a great team. And so I brought that up during the interview, right? And
Smart.
that was a good point of connection, right? Fortunately, not end up moving to the next round, but we became to an extent felt like friends because we spent half of the interview talking about soccer, something we're both interested in,
Yeah.
and then half of the interview going through some exercises. But it's important. We're all humans, and that human element is always important. Make sure to connect with the other person in a genuine, authentic way.
Yeah, yeah, and I use that. You bring up human, and that's something that's really important. We're all humans, and we all want to break the ice because everyone's nervous for interviews. So if
Yeah.
you can be proactive and break the ice in every round, so not just the recruiter round, but every single round, it's going to come through, and everybody will kind of have that same feedback. Ah, sir, he made this conversation easy, like he was comfortable. He's going to be easy to work with. That's kind of what I'm trying to get across in every interview I have, is show my personality and show that human connection.
Mm.
Especially for program management roles, you need to be able to work well with others.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's like, I talked about preparation, right? I talked about doing research on the company and the people you're interviewing with.
Mm-hmm.
So you pass the recruiter phase and you make it to usually it's like hiring manager. This one's probably the most important interview, if I'm being honest. This is going to be your manager. And I think the deep research is even more important at this phase, and understanding who they are, right? You go to their LinkedIn, you figure out where they worked. For Airbnb, I think I looked at, the hiring, my manager now, I looked at his LinkedIn. I saw that he worked at Apple in the past. He was at a few different companies. And I brought that up during the interview. So he saw, okay, Sergio did his research, right? He asked me a really good question about this or that. And I think it's in the hiring manager phase, I think what's most important is building the connection, showing why you're a strong fit for the role, right? There are specific skills these companies are looking for whatever role they're hiring for. So you should have done your research. I talked about the job description. You should be very clear about why you're a good fit and have that come out in all of your answers, right? So when you start answering questions, if they ask about like, how have you done this in the past, make sure the examples you're using are super relevant to the role and the position. They're trying to solve a problem, their hiring manager. So you want to be clear that you're going to help them solve the problem, right? And if you're not clear on that, then like you're not going to get the role. You're not going to make it to the next phase. But
Right.
if you can like be very clear, like, okay, Sergio's going to actually help me solve this thing, let's move him to the next round. So I think it's like research, being very clear about your skill set, that human connection with the hiring manager, and then just making sure that you're like 100% clear on the role, and then the questions you have documented ahead of time. The questions you ask the hiring manager should be very specific to the role,
Mm.
and you should have a few about the company too that you're interested in. But like, really get clear on the role in that round.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, a hiring manager is looking to find someone they can trust to
Mhm.
solve that problem, to get the job done, right? Any good examples of questions?
Something I use pretty often. This is a basic one, but like really understanding what the hiring manager is most excited about
Mm.
in the coming months, and what the biggest challenges that they have on their plate. Then you start getting them talking about some of the challenges. And then I think what I usually ask is like, well, what skill set are you looking? What skill set should this candidate have, right? And how is this person gonna help you solve this problem,
Mm.
right? And then you start getting them to talk about the skill set and the experience. And I strategically ask that question because they should be defining you. And
Right.
if they're not defining you, then you have a problem.
Right. And then if you were to get that job, that opportunity, now you have the priorities that your manager is looking to achieve, right? And those are that's a clear plan for you to follow to make sure that you succeed in that role. So even before you get the job, you know exactly what the manager is looking for,
Yep.
and if you get the job, you know how to kind of go ahead and execute.
Yeah. What is like, I think I usually ask like, what does success look like within 6 months for this
Mhm.
whoever you hire? What is this a successful 6 months going to look like, right? The 30, 60, 90, up to 60 days. What does success look like? Then you start really getting them to talk about what that might look like, the good and the bad. And then I think from like a human connection standpoint, it's really important to ask the management style, like really
Mhm.
try to understand what type of manager and leader this person is. So I usually would ask, what in your experience, like what does good leadership look like?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're also interviewing this person. For me to leave LinkedIn, I had a great manager at LinkedIn.
Mm.
So it took a lot for me to leave LinkedIn, and I needed to know what I was getting into. So I think if you ask this question and they come back with like, you can start to like understand, okay, is this person going to be a micromanager? Is this person going to give me autonomy? Those are some of the things you really need to kind of watch out for and look for when you ask that question.
Yeah, I do want to come back to managers in a bit, but I want to kind of wrap up kind of the whole interview
Oh yeah,
preparation
yeah, yeah.
process. So you got the hiring manager. I think maybe next might be on-site, right? Which all the advice you've given us around research, right? The person you're meeting with, researching the company, right? Establishing that first impression and connection with folks you're interviewing,
Yep.
apply to the on-site. Anything specific in the on-site that you would like to
It's
highlight?
different. Yeah, I think what's different about the on-site or now virtual,
Mhm.
you're going to be meeting right with different maybe people involved in the project you're working on, maybe people on the team you're joining. What's important here is highlighting your relationship building skills, right?
Mhm.
These might be people you work with, right? So you're going to need to show how well you work with others. So the examples you use are going to need to show very complex projects that you've worked on and how you've succeeded, how you've thrived in difficult situations. If you've encountered, you likely will get asked, tell me about a time you've worked with a tough coworker, right? So you need to be ready to answer that. And I think in this phase, like that connection piece is huge. We talked about that. I think it still goes through this phase, and just really like landing the research part is also really important because adaptability, right? So you might be talking to an engineer, maybe you're talking to a product manager,
Mhm.
so you need to kind of know how that function thinks, right? So you might have to tweak your style for each interview. Like in the Airbnb interview, for example, I talked to a VP of product. I talked to an individual product manager.
Mm.
I talked to a senior technical program manager, like senior manager, and then I talked to one other function. Oh, I think design. So design all these different functions. So I had to do enough research and understand kind of how those different functions kind of operate,
Mm.
right? And what's important to them. And I use that to kind of tailor my answers. Like it's not a one size fit all approach for me. I'm very like intentional with the types of questions I ask a product manager, and then what I would ask a engineering manager or someone else.
Right. Like you said at the beginning of the interview, is like we gotta treat it like a project, right? And this kind of advice applies to all your interviews, right? Treat every individual interview like a project. You're meeting different people who have different interests, different passions. So
Yep.
you want to make sure you tailor your questions, your answers, your preparation for the folks that you're meeting with. And I think you are such a great program manager because in your answers to these questions, you keep on providing lots of good traits that great program managers have and product managers as well. So I know I'm talking to the real deal right here. So we've kind of gone all the way to onsite. Usually after onsite, if the team likes you, it comes time for offer negotiation. And Sergio,
Yeah.
you've gotten offers at some of the biggest and fastest growing tech companies. To name a few: Google, Facebook, now Meta, Amazon, LinkedIn, and most recently Airbnb. What advice do you have on approaching salary negotiation?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think one component of before I go into that, one component of the Airbnb interview process that was really cool that I'd like to share is the culture and value part. And that is where I don't know if you had that,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. I did.
yeah, just real quick, I thought that was very unique, so I wanted to give them a shout out. But that is where you'll get interviewed by likely one or two people, and they won't know what role you're looking for. They don't have your resume. They're literally just interviewing to see kind of who you are as a person and kind of what makes you unique. So it's a culture and value interview where they ask questions about, what are you passionate about? What kind of what things keep you going, give you energy, that sort of thing. And I thought that is where I actually probably stood out the most, is because I was able just to talk to these different people about different things I'm passionate about. And I think that's why Airbnb is such a unique culture is they bring that into the interview process. And for me, that really stood out.
Yeah, I also had the cultural interviews, and it's really about values. And so if you go to Airbnb's website today, you'll see they have listed out their values. and that's how they operate. That's how they make decisions. And you see that if you were to join the company, you see that in how decisions are made,
Yep.
all the way from leaders to like individual contributors. It's a really, I think, unique way of displaying the value of being a host, right? When it comes to interviews, like you
Exactly.
said, sometimes it feels like it may feel that it's a one-sided conversation. Like, hey, I'm as the interviewee, I'm looking to get a job at your company, but really interviews it's a two-way street. As much as they're interviewing you, you are also interviewing them.
Yeah.
And I think I really enjoyed that piece, Airbnb's kind of interview style, because I hadn't seen it anywhere
Yeah.
else. I
Yeah.
did
I
I
hadn't
did
seen
feel
either.
like at home, and it was nice after I joined. The people that were part of my values were some of the first people I reached out to say, "Hey, I just joined the company. Really enjoyed our conversation. Let's
That's
have a
awesome.
follow up thing to continue connecting and knowing more about each other."
That's really cool. Yeah. So I thought I'd call that out, but yeah, salary negotiation's tough. I think for me, at my stage in my career, I kind of have a good sense of where ballpark,
Mhm.
right? And I think over time, so for anybody who's early or mid in their career, I think it's important to research. I've said this a few times, but there are lots of tools out there. And Dante, you might know more than I do, but I know there's like levels.fyi.
Yes.
There's a few different sites that people can take advantage of to just understand like a baseline, right? Where should I be at, right? LinkedIn is becoming more transparent with pay as well.
Mm.
So I think what was cool about Airbnb, I'll just give you another concrete example, is they had a base pay range in the role when I applied. So I knew like, okay, so this range is exactly where I want to be and more. And I think that actually made it the whole process way easier because I knew what I was getting into.
Right.
And when they threw out, the recruiter was very intentional early on to understand what my expectations were. And it was already transparent because it
Mm.
was either this or this, right? And she gave me the what she thought I would land at based off the conversation, and we were aligned,
That's
right?
great.
And I think even you and I, we talked once I got the offer about bonus and all that, and then there's RSUs, and I think from a negotiating standpoint, you don't want that to be a bad conversation, or you don't want it to seem like you're like, I need more money, I need more money. It's more like
Right.
I had a great interview. These are the expectations, and like they want to hire you so that you actually have some leverage. If they're
Mhm.
willing to give you an offer, that means they want to hire you out of if it's an Airbnb or Google or whatever, there's 500 applicants.
Right.
So as the person in this position, you have leverage. You don't have to take the first offer. With Airbnb, I didn't.
Mm.
I went back. I negotiated. I got, maybe I think I got more RSUs. I think you actually helped me negotiate more bonus if I remember correctly. We talked about that.
Yeah, the sign-on bonus, right? I think that's the hidden
Yeah.
lever a lot of folks don't know about. So there's a few levers I just want to share with folks. One is your base salary, right? That's like your yearly annual salary that you'll get. Two, it's going to be, some companies offer this, not all, but a yearly bonus. So usually a percentage of your base,
Yep.
it's how much bonus you will get. Third is if it's a private company, it's going to be RSUs. If it's a public company, they give out stock grants. And then the last lever that I'm aware of is you can ask for a sign-on bonus. And a sign-on bonus is in addition to those kind of three levers, some companies can offer you, an additional amount by accepting their offer and moving fast in that process. And so those are kind of the four levers when thinking about salary negotiation that
Yeah.
you can move up or down, right? Depending on what's the package that you're looking for. But at the end of the day, Sergio, I think you said it really well. Is make sure you understand your worth and what's that baseline in general for roles that you're applying to, maybe in specific locations, just to make sure that you're not falling out of band or lower than that baseline.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's what I loved about the Airbnb process is she was really clear about it in our first call.
Mm.
So we didn't have a bunch of interviews, and then I realized, wait, this is way underpay or like whatever, right?
Right.
So I think it's actually important to get clear early if you can on a general estimate ballpark range. Doesn't need to be
Mhm.
specific numbers. You just want to make sure you're not way over or way under. And then I think as you get your offers, it's important to like, even though you're like probably shouting and screaming on the inside, yes, this company wants to hire me. What I've learned over time is there is opportunity. There's always opportunities to negotiate, whether it's more stock. Stock could be valuable 4 or 5 years from now. or maybe more base pays, like you mentioned the different components. Base pay is more important. You want to
Mhm.
bring home more money. There's bonus, like you said, and then the sign-on bonus. So I think like understanding that you can negotiate is the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there is you treat it like you're solving a problem, right? There's a mutual goal that you're both trying to get at, right? And work together. Be honest, be transparent, right?
Yeah.
Be kind when
Yeah.
doing these
Yes.
negotiations. And like Sergio said, don't take the first offer. I think there's always, always, always room to negotiate. You just simply have to ask and then just wait to hear back. And
Yeah.
then you can decide from there.
Yeah. And document. I think what helped me get the additional sign-on bonus was documenting kind of the why. And the
Mm,
why for me was the some of the money I was leaving on the table for
mm,
the vested shares I had at my previous company.
mm,
So if you currently have a job and you have another offer on the table, it's important to be able to show them, well, why you're asking for more. If you're just like, oh, I want more, but you don't have any data or reasoning, then it's
yeah,
going to be a harder sell. So
right.
yeah, I think that's one component. If you currently have a job, it's important to kind of show the why you think you're worth more.
Yeah, document everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just like a good program manager would do.
Yeah.
That's very important. There's three more questions, Sergio, that I
Okay.
have for you, and then we'll wrap it up. My next question is: I did say I wanted to come back to managers. So
Yeah.
one of the most important skills that you actually talked about in your podcast, the Free Retiree Show, make sure to check it out, is managing up.
Yeah.
So I would like to hear more. What does that mean, and why is managing up important for advancing in your career and potentially getting promoted?
Yeah, this is something I learned very late in my career. I actually wish somebody would have told me about this when I started. I'm how old am I? I'm 37, right? And I learned about managing up when I was like 30 in the last 3 years. So managing up by definition is essentially like making sure you put your best foot forward and understand how your manager works, right? All the time, every time. Be consistent. Your manager is a stakeholder. I didn't realize that or understood. I never understood that until way too late in my career. It's one of the mistakes I always talk about. So you need to understand and treat your manager like they are a stakeholder. I treat all my other stakeholders great, and there's been moments where I've like kind of haven't done so great with my manager, and that's on me. So I think to me, managing up is simply that. Like you want to make sure your manager on a weekly or however often basis knows what you're working on, knows the risk, knows where you need help, knows where they can step in, and they just can count on you. They can trust you because they know you have everything like documented in the one-on-ones. You have put the time in. The other part of managing up is knowing the type of personality of your manager, right? I've been in situations where I've had managers who are very detailed oriented or want things done a certain way, and I completely disregarded it. Right, I'm going to be very vulnerable now, and I think over time I've learned you need to have that conversation like in the first or second one-on-one with your manager to understand their working style. And then once you understand that, you can then tailor the way you work with them and communicate to make sure you're not hitting those like those triggers is what I call them.
Mm,
If you have a manager who hates email, but all you do is send email, it's probably not going to be good,
right.
right? If you have a manager who loves Slack, Slack them. If you have a manager who's very detailed oriented and wants everything in a doc 24 hours before you meet with them, do it.
Mhm.
Right. And then they can be like, Sergio, I can count on him to do this. He's consistent. I got some good feedback from my manager at Airbnb recently
Mm.
about my meeting agendas. He always knows exactly what we're going to talk about ahead of time. Our meetings flow and he's like rolling it out to the whole team. It's just a little
Hey,
template I do.
congrats.
Basic template. It's super
Yeah.
easy. But like to me, this is what managing up is. Like it's not about politics or anything like that. It's more about treating your manager like a stakeholder, right?
Mm,
And they're going to be your biggest advocate because they're the ones that honestly you want them to have your back when you're not in the room.
yeah.
Because if they don't, the opposite happens. You're not getting promoted. You're probably going to get micromanaged, and it's just not going to be a good experience.
Treat your manager like a stakeholder. I love that. That's very insightful. You touched upon even the operating system concept,
Mm,
right? Managers may have different types of operating systems.
Yeah.
So you want to plug in and understand how they operate, and really embracing their operating system.
Yeah, the other thing I forgot to mention was just you wanna make sure that your manager doesn't feel like they even have to manage you.
Mhm.
It's almost like they're there to just move obstacles maybe or support you. But, like, you're running for me, I'm running my own business, and I have a consultant at my disposal whenever I need it, but I'm running my
Mm.
own business. And that's how I feel the best relationship is like you have someone there to support you when you need it, but like they know you're running your deal and like they can jump in here and there, but they're not always having to hold your hand.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
managers are there to enable you, to help you grow, but it's like you said, that's where managing up comes in, right? It's up to you to run the show,
Yeah.
right? And then your managers is just there to provide visibility, support you, empower you, but
Yeah.
you're the person running the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Last two questions, Sergio. Looking back at your journey in tech, what would you say has been critical to your success?
Yeah, I've had a lot of ups and downs. I think what's been critical to my success is understanding what I'm really good at and getting clear on a certain set of skills that not everybody has. And what I mean by that is over the last 6 years, I've been very intentional about staying in the new product launch kind of space.
Mhm.
And I think it's a relatively niche space where not everybody's comfortable being in environments where things aren't documented, it's chaos, we're creating something new, we don't know what to do. And I've pretty seamlessly transitioned across a number of different new products or programs. So I think like when I think about what's been critical to my success is being very like intentional about the opportunities I take and raising my hand for different opportunities because you never know where something might lead you to. And the only way I got into this new products kind of project management space was raising my hand for a random project, a 10% project at Google years ago that nobody wanted to do. And it was being able to work on what is now known as Google Wi-Fi. It was a hardware product.
Mm.
And that was just because I was like, oh, that seems interesting. I said yes. So I think saying yes and understanding what you're good at is really important for everyone's career. Like saying no, yes more than you say no for opportunities, and then defining a path for yourself. Like I know that I can be the guy that's like, oh, the new product launch guy. That's what I can do.
Finding your strengths,
Exactly.
and saying yes to opportunity.
Yeah.
I love that. Any final thoughts, Sergio, or a career advice for our viewers today as we wrap up our conversation?
Yeah, I was just talking about how a career is not a straight path. Was I can't remember who. It was actually the co-host on the podcast.
Mm.
We were talking about how each of us we came from these very we both actually coming out of college. I graduated in 2007
Mm.
and it was right at the financial crisis when the banks collapsed.
Oh wow.
So there was no jobs and we both started working at Enterprise Rent a Car,
Mhm.
making $11 an hour. And then I did cold calling and then somehow I like ended up in operations and then there was this one other role and then it was like this roller coaster. Got laid off. I didn't do well at one job. I had to find another job and just careers are not like a straight path. It's going to be lots of ups and downs and I think people are recognizing that now with the layoffs and like I think just embrace it. I could take one of the pillars of or one of the principles at Airbnb is their values. It's like embrace the adventure.
Mhm.
And I think all of our careers are an adventure, right?
Mm.
I think you're going through that right now, Dante. You got laid off at Airbnb. You've worked at Facebook, Instagram. You're at WePay. Did I have the name right? WePay.
Hey, we pay no, now at
WePay.
borrow. Mhm.
Varo. Like
Yeah,
you're kind of going through that right now. I
yeah,
think, right? And
yeah.
it's not a straight line. I think our parents' generation. My
Mhm.
dad worked at Cisco for like 20 years,
Mm.
and my mom was at some. So when I tell them I'm switching job, they just think I'm crazy.
I get the same response from my parents. It's like you have a job there, stay there for a few more years, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, I think one of the pieces of advice I really like that you shared is say yes to opportunity. And if it's a great opportunity, it's an interesting challenge or problem space you want to go after, try it out. I'm all about embracing the adventure. But yeah, I think overall careers are like an adventure and there's lots of ups and downs. It's not easy. It's
Yeah.
definitely not linear
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. So I agree with you on that.
But that's about it, man. That's all I got. Hopefully it was helpful to the listeners, but appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Sergio. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. Make sure to check out the free retiree show. We'll include it in the description down below. Thank you so much, Sergio. I learned a lot from our conversation today.
Thank you.